Over on Jabbergator 7, a new baseball video is out. In this video, we talk about the time that the Kansas City Royals ran a promotion that was so bad that they had to apologize for it afterwards. Click the card in the upper right corner to watch. And now, on with our feature presentation. October 8th, 1975. It's Wednesday, and this man right here, Baltimore Colts head coach Ted Marchibroda, is not satisfied with his team. Not in the slightest bit. Because as the team was getting ready for their all-important game against the Buffalo Bills, what should have been a sharp practice, as it was the first full workout of the week, was anything but that. It was a sloppy affair that did not resemble the work of an NFL team. As Marchibroda said quite bluntly on how poor this practice was, the players seemed to lack concentration out there. Now, every team has bad practices every now and then. You're never going to see a team, with how many practices there are in a season, have 100% great practices across the board. Just like you might not be at 100% every day you go to work, players are human, and the same thing can happen to them. You're going to have lousy practices that don't go according to how you planned them. However, it's about how you bounce back from these practices. And if Marchibroda thought that the team's Wednesday practice was bad, then oh man, he had no idea what was coming his way on Thursday. Because what followed was a practice that, quite simply, you could not believe was from a professional football organization. And I don't mean that the players were bad or underperforming or anything like that. I mean a practice that was such a logistical nightmare where no one knew what to do that we will never see the likes of anything like it ever again. Just when the Colts needed a good day of practice most, the football gods had other ideas, as did the incompetence of their management. Because this is the story behind what has to be, without a doubt, the worst and craziest practice in the history of the Colts. Before I talk about the practice in question, we need some context to understand the importance of the game at hand, which is this game right here, as well as what the original plan was, because trust me, it was nothing like this at all. It's week 4 of the NFL season, and we have a big game in the AFC East between the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Colts that the Colts desperately have to get ready for. After winning their first game of the season, they dropped 2 straight, losing to the Oakland Raiders and the Los Angeles Rams, and now find themselves in danger of dropping to 1-3 if they can't beat Buffalo. The good news was that this game was at home, so at least the Colts had that going for them. The bad news? Their opponent, the Bills, was 3-0, and was the best team in football at the end of September, with a point differential through 3 weeks of +61, thanks to a dominant offense that was number 1 in football by scoring 110 points, or nearly 37 points per game. The even worse news? If the Colts lost this game and dropped to 1-3, that was troublesome, because of the 8 teams to make the playoffs the previous year in 1974, none of them were 1-3 or worse through 4 games. The same thing held true in 1973, and in 1972, and in 1971. So the last 32 teams to make the playoffs were at or above 500 after 4 games. In other words, this felt like a must-win, so a sharp practice was absolutely essential, especially after the debacle that plagued the Colts on Wednesday with their slow, lethargic practice where everyone just seemed to be going through the motions. Now, the Colts usually practice in their home stadium, and practice right inside of Memorial Stadium. That's what they did on Wednesday, and that's what they were able to do with ease now that the Baltimore Orioles season was done. However, the weather wasn't exactly very cooperative, because at this point in October, Baltimore was being hit with lots and lots of rain. Practicing in the rain isn't an issue here. The players can handle it, and football is played in the elements. But when you practice in the rain, and have guys running full speed in the rain, it means the field takes an absolute beating. The Colts tried the best that they could on Wednesday during the rain-soaked practice to protect the field, as they didn't practice in the infield. Instead, they practiced in the grass portion of the outfield. But by the end of practice, The field was looking unrecognizable, dirty, and completely beaten up, to the point where it was barely playable. And when the rain didn't slow down on Thursday, the Colts knew that they couldn't practice at Memorial Stadium. If they did, then not only did they risk injury to the players, since it would be on a bad field, but the field would not be ready and would not be able to recover in time for Sunday's all-important showdown against Buffalo. The entire field had to be covered with a tarp, and obviously, you're not practicing on top of a tarp. So the Colts had two options. Option one was to just cancel practice, which didn't seem like the smartest idea, especially considering the nature of this game, and especially after Wednesday's poor outing. You needed to have a good practice in there. I mean, you can have some surprise off days where the team doesn't practice, as we saw a bizarre controversy with that in 1989 that you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But it's not common at all. Option two was to simply move the practice somewhere else. Now, you would think that the Colts, being a professional organization and all that, and knowing that their stadium was beaten up and they would need to practice somewhere else, would have a backup plan in mind, right? You would think they would have an indoor facility, or they would be calling up local high schools and seeing if they could borrow their field, or something along those lines. That would be the smart thing to do. That would be what a professional organization would do. But as you can probably guess, the Colts did not do that. Because when all was said and done, the Colts held this practice across the street from Memorial Stadium at Eastern High School. You might be asking, what's the problem with that? Well, two things. Number one, Eastern High School is an all-girls school, which means they don't have a football field. That's kind of a problem for obvious reasons, because if you want to run plays and do situational things and practice kicks and whatnot, you need to do so on a football field. And number two, Eastern High School didn't even have a field. It's not like they had a softball outfield or a soccer field or anything along those lines that could at least make do. Instead, they had a swamp. Literally a swamp. So the Colts, due to their own incompetence and mismanagement, were now holding their all-important practice at a swamp at an all-girls high school. But hold up, because it gets worse. Because it's not even just the fact that they held practice in an all-girls high school swamp, because that's bad enough. Want to know how they arrived at practice? They got to Memorial Stadium, and then had to cross the street. Now you might be asking yourself, come on, what's so bad about that? You're telling me you've never parked anywhere before, and then walked across the street to get to your destination? Well, this wasn't quite like that. Because to cross East 33rd Street to get from Memorial Stadium to the Eastern High School field, you had to cross over 2 lanes of traffic going eastbound and 2 lanes of traffic going westbound. Oh, and there were no stoplights, nor were there any crosswalks. In other words, the Colts had to play real-life Frogger to make it to practice. This was like the scene in Dodgeball, where if you can dodge traffic, you can dodge a ball. Only in this case, if you can dodge traffic, you can dodge a tackler. Wide receiver Roger Carr, who you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, nearly got hit by oncoming traffic, and said afterwards that he was just practicing his moves by ducking all those cars. But hold up, because it gets even worse. So you have no backup plan, and are forced to not only practice at a swamp, but you have to dodge 4 lanes of traffic on a fast road to do so. Now, you have to practice special teams. That's right. Today was supposed to be the day that kicker Tony Linhart, who you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, got a ton of action, and they got to practice that phase of the game. And to the Colts' credit, they did just that. However, aside from the fact that the grass was super high, seeing as this was a swamp, making it impossible to kick, and not even coming close to simulating in-game conditions, what are you not going to find in a swamp? You guessed it, goalposts. That means that the Colts were practicing these special teams plays and situations, and had no idea whether or not any of the kicks were good. What exactly they did, I have no clue. Maybe they just got 2 sticks and put them down, almost like when you're young and are making a makeshift goal for soccer or makeshift bases for baseball or softball. Except this isn't a group of 9-year-old children playing a pickup game, but rather a professional football organization. Everything about this practice truly was a disaster that could not have come at a worse possible time. Just to recap before going any further, what was supposed to be a bounce-back practice after Wednesday's lethargic catastrophe turned out to be an infamous, incredibly poorly designed practice that almost seems made up, taking place at a swamp at an all-girls high school without any goalposts or anything resembling a football field, and taking place at a location where the players had to dodge oncoming traffic to get to and from the place. And as you can tell from the highlights of this game, this practice didn't exactly help matters much, as when all was said and done, the Baltimore Colts fell 3 games behind the Buffalo Bills for the AFC East lead and dropped to 1-3 on the season, as they lost in front of their home fans by a final score of 38-31. I'm not saying that the Colts win this game if they had a good Thursday practice, because there are way too many variables involved, and we've heard coaches say too many times that the team had a good week of practice and looked sharp, only for the team to get destroyed by 40 points when it mattered most on Sunday. However, this practice definitely didn't help them, I'll put it like that. The Colts looked atrocious on defense, allowing 26 first downs, allowing 424 yards of total offense, and allowing star running back O.J. Simpson to run for 159 yards on nearly 5 yards per carry, as well as a touchdown. Buffalo ended the game on a 38-17 scoring run, and kicker Tony Linhart, as in the man who was kicking field goals during that practice without a goalpost, and in absurdly high grass that resembled that of what you're hitting a golf ball out of when you badly shank your tee shot, ended up missing a field goal. Because of course he did. And I don't know what's crazier, how bad this practice was, and how incompetent everyone involved was in not having a contingency plan for an actual football field that didn't involve this, or the fact that a month later, it literally happened again, as prior to their Week 9 game against the New York Jets, they were once again practicing in the swamp across the street. What's that saying about the definition of insanity again? This awful practice by the Colts taught everyone the important lesson of having backup plans and having contingency plans in place, so you don't have to resort to this. If you know it's raining, and know that you might have to move practice away from your home facility as a result, because the field would take too much of a beating, call up places with football fields. Call up places with adequate space to roam. Call up places where the players can get there safely. In other words, don't do whatever the heck the Colts did, where you're resorting to an unsafe swamp across 4 lanes of traffic that has no goalposts, and that is at an all-girls high school that is clearly not built for having a football practice occur over there. Then again, this is the same city that the same week held their Columbus Day Parade at 2 p.m. that Sunday, as in the same time that the Colts were playing at home against the Bills, and on a route where traffic to the game would be impacted. So I guess poor logistical planning just runs in the city. Because in the hundreds upon hundreds of practices that Ted Marchibroda ran as a head coach, I'm not sure he ever had one quite as bizarre and as out of place as this one from October 9th, 1975. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel, Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.